4 years. That's how long I'd poured myself into Dryfield robotics. 4 years of arriving first and leaving last. 4 years of believing that loyalty meant something in the concrete jungle of corporate life. Every morning I'd swipe my badge, step through those glass doors and breathe in the same recycled air, half coffee, half ambition. I told myself this was the smell of success. And in a way it was. Until it wasn't. Lawrence Bennett, our CEO, was the kind of man who could sell sand in a desert. Tan skin from constant Miami business trips, gold watch flashing whenever he gestured, voice always dripping with control. People didn't speak in meetings, they performed for him. I wasn't the type to perform. I just delivered. Double the numbers of my peers. Brought in accounts everyone said were impossible. While others chased recognition, I chased results. Tyler Davis, on the other hand, the company's golden boy, had learned the first rule of survival. It's not who works hardest. It's who plays the game best. He smiled in all the right hallways. Laughed at all the right jokes. And when I landed the Westbrook deal after 6 brutal months of calls and flights, he was there, to take the credit. I told myself it was fine. That people like Tyler always win small battles, but I'd win the war. Then he got the promotion. A company car. And suddenly my calendar stopped filling with meeting invites. A week later, when I asked about the missing invites, Lawrence smiled and said, "We're restructuring how communication flows. Don't worry about it." That was code for stay quiet. But the final straw wasn't a stolen deal or an ignored email. It was the silence that followed my biggest win. Abbott Manufacturing, $2 million in new business. The largest contract of the year. I'd flown to Chicago 3 times on my own dime. Missed my cousin's wedding. Worked through every weekend. When the deal closed, I waited for acknowledgement, maybe even gratitude. Instead, I saw it on Instagram. The team at the bar celebrating. Every face there, except mine. That night, I stared at the picture until the screen dimmed. Then I opened my laptop, dusted off my resume and realized something chilling. I had become invisible. A week later, a message popped into my LinkedIn inbox. Vanessa Mills. Former client at Dryfield, now head of business development at Raven Publishing. Her message was short. Coffee soon? I might have something you'd be perfect for. I reread it 3 times. Opportunity had a strange way of whispering just when you're ready to give up. We met at a cafe near downtown. She smiled, confident, composed. "We're expanding," she said. "We need someone who understands corporate accounts, someone with your reputation." For the first time in years, I felt seen. We talked numbers, strategy, vision. It felt less like an interview, more like a homecoming. When we parted, she said, "Take a day. Think it through. I'll have HR reach out if you're interested." I walked out feeling a lightness I hadn't known in months. It was a vacation day anyway, my first in nearly a year. I didn't owe Dryfield an explanation for how I spent it. Or so I thought. Music drops to a tense hum. Someone saw me in the Raven lobby. By Monday, the whisper had reached Tyler's desk. By Tuesday, it was in Lawrence Bennett's ear. Friday morning, 8:03 a.m., I got the email. "Come to my office immediately." Cut to visual, elevator doors closing, camera tracking upward. Lawrence sat behind his desk, the Miami tan still fresh, his expression unreadable. "I heard you had a job interview during your vacation day," he began. I nodded. "That's right." "You know," he said, "I've always valued loyalty here. This shows you're not committed to our team." My jaw tightened. "Lawrence, I brought in over $2 million this quarter alone. I've asked for a raise 3 times. He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "The timing isn't right. We're restructuring compensation." The same line. Word for word. He leaned forward. "I'm afraid I have to let you go. Effective immediately." Silence filled the room like fog. I studied his face, the tiny twitch near his eye, the flicker of discomfort when I didn't argue. I stood. Extended my hand. He hesitated before shaking it. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said. And just like that, 4 years of my life ended with one polite handshake. I walked back to my desk. Every step echoed louder than the last. People looked up, then quickly back to their screens. April from HR hovered nearby, pretending to sort papers but really making sure I didn't pocket a stapler. I opened a cardboard box from the supply room. Coffee mug. A few pens. A tiny cactus I'd kept alive for 3 years. 4 years of effort, reduced to items smaller than a microwave. Tyler stepped out of his office as I passed. The same man who'd once told me my raise was in process. He looked away. At the elevator, I caught my reflection. I didn't look fired. I looked, lighter. Cut to, car interior, dashboard lights glowing. I sat in my car for an hour, staring at the building that had been my world. The parking lot was half empty, the sky bruised with dusk. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. Sorry about how things went down. Delete. Then an email notification. Vanessa Mills. Can you come in tomorrow? 10 a.m. The team would like to meet you. I typed one word back. Yes. Music lifts slightly. That night, over dinner, my father listened as I told him everything. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he folded his hands and said softly, "They did you a favor, son. They showed you exactly who they are." He was right. Sometimes the door that closes isn't rejection, it's redirection. The next morning, the city felt different. Maybe it was me who'd changed. I ironed my only navy suit, the same one I'd worn to my first day at Dryfield. The fabric had seen hundreds of boardrooms, thousands of hours, and just as many disappointments. But today it felt like armor. When I arrived at Raven Publishing, the lobby was warm and bright. Tall glass walls, soft lighting, people who looked happy to be there. The receptionist smiled as I signed in. I wasn't used to that. Upstairs, Vanessa Mills greeted me like an old friend. Her energy filled the room, confident, capable, the kind of leader who inspired rather than intimidated. "Jared, so glad you could make it." She guided me to a modern conference room. Sunlight poured across polished wood. There were already 3 people seated, a marketing director, a finance officer, and a quiet woman typing on a tablet. Vanessa began. "We won't waste your time. We've already spoken with Abbott Manufacturing about you. They said you were the reason they signed with Dryfield." I blinked. "They did?" She smiled. "They did. We like that. We're growing fast and we need someone who can build relationships like that from scratch." They asked questions about strategy, my process, my philosophy. I answered honestly, not with buzzwords, not with slogans. I talked about the nights I stayed up reworking proposals, the meetings that went sideways and how I saved them, the belief that clients buy trust, not products. 20 minutes later, Vanessa leaned back. "We've heard enough. We want you." I hesitated. "You mean?" "Regional director. Double what you made at Dryfield. Company card, office with a window. You'll build a new business division from the ground up." For a moment I forgot to breathe. "When can you start?" she asked. I smiled. "Immediately." That afternoon I sat in my car again. Same seat, different feeling. Last time I'd been staring at the ashes of what I'd lost. This time I was looking at the beginning of something new. The first week at Raven felt like oxygen. I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore. I wasn't waiting for someone to steal credit or undercut me in a meeting. Vanessa gave me 3 people, a small team but eager and sharp. Maya, who handled analytics. Owen, a quiet genius with contracts. And Priya, our strategist with a memory like a steel trap. We set up in a corner office that still smelled of new carpet and fresh paint. I scribbled words on the whiteboard. Value. Trust. Execution. We built from zero. Systems, client lists, outreach strategy. Every late night felt different here. It wasn't exhaustion. It was purpose. Vanessa stopped by often, offering guidance without micromanaging. Once, as she watched me diagram a client acquisition funnel, she said, "You know, Jared, people don't realize how much reputation matters in this industry. Yours precedes you. That's why you're here." I nodded, humbled. "Thank you for believing in me." "Don't thank me yet," she said with a grin. "Prove me right." Cut to, calendar pages flipping, time passing. 2 weeks later I was ready. I opened LinkedIn and started reconnecting with everyone from my old life at Dryfield. Colleagues, suppliers, clients. Most of them accepted my requests within hours. A few sent messages, "Good to see you, man. Heard what happened, their loss." I smiled at each one. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was acknowledgement that I'd mattered. Then I moved to the next step, outreach. Emails, calls, introductions. I started with Abbott Manufacturing, the company I'd fought so hard to bring in. "Hey Jared," said the procurement lead on the phone. "Heard you're with Raven now. Funny thing, we were just looking for new partnership opportunities." I felt the spark ignite. "Well," I said, "let's make something happen." By Friday I had 3 meetings on the books, all with Dryfield's biggest accounts. The same ones that had built my career there. Now they'd hear from me again, but this time I wasn't the underdog. The first call came Friday afternoon. Lawrence Bennett. I let it ring. Then again 10 minutes later. Voicemail. An hour later, Tyler Davis. Also voicemail. They were starting to notice. I opened my inbox. Emails from old clients congratulating me on the move. Some asking for meetings. One wrote, "We were sorry to hear how things ended there. Let's talk. Maybe we can shift our contracts to your new firm." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the message. Not out of spite. Out of awe. In 3 weeks, the same network they'd built their empire on was gravitating toward me. Not because I was the loudest, but because I'd built genuine trust. Visual, side by side, at Dryfield, sterile boardrooms, at Raven, warm collaboration. Monday morning, I walked into my first big meeting, Abbott Manufacturing. The procurement director smiled as soon as he saw me. "Jared, I was wondering when you'd reach out." That one line, it said everything. By the end of the meeting, they agreed to transfer 2 contracts to Raven. I walked out with a signed commitment worth $1.2 million. And that was just the beginning. Music builds slowly, hopeful yet grounded. Back at the office, Vanessa waited at my desk. "I heard," she said. "Already? 2 weeks in?" "Abbott just moved," I said. "And more are lining up." She smiled, shaking her head. "You're going to make me look good." I laughed. "That's the plan." But beneath the humor there was something else, a quiet satisfaction. A sense of balance slowly returning to the world. Momentum is a strange thing. Once it starts, it's hard to stop, like a tide turning in your favor after years of swimming against it. By the 3rd week at Raven, our small team was on fire. Deals were closing, referrals were coming in, and every name I saw on my call sheet reminded me of a bridge I'd built long before I knew I'd need to cross it. One morning, Vanessa knocked on my office door. "You're trending on LinkedIn," she said with a grin. I frowned. "What?" "Clients are tagging you. Big congrats to Jared Davis for joining Raven. Even Abbott Manufacturing CEO mentioned you in his post. That's visibility we can't buy." I smiled. "Guess word travels fast." "Faster when people respect you," she replied. "Keep it going." The next few days were a blur of travel and calls. Every meeting felt like déjà vu, the same clients, same rooms, same conversations, but this time I wasn't defending my worth. I was leading. At Dryfield, they'd called me ambitious like it was an insult. At Raven, it was the job description. When I checked my phone that Friday, there were 5 missed calls from Lawrence. No voicemail this time. Just persistence. I stared at the screen, then turned it face down. Some bridges don't need burning. Sometimes you just build a better one across the river. 3 weeks after I'd left, Dryfield started to crack. First came the client losses. Then the whispers in the industry. Tyler's name popped up in trade news, VP of sales under scrutiny after contract terminations. Then Lawrence sent the email. "Mr. Davis, it has come to my attention that you've been contacting our clients since your departure. Cease and desist immediately, or we will pursue legal action." I read it twice, then forwarded it straight to Raven's legal department with one line. "These are my relationships, not his." An hour later, Vanessa called. Her voice was calm, but there was a hint of pride. "Nicely handled," she said. "You don't have to worry. You're fully within your rights." By the end of that week, we'd officially signed 2 of Dryfield's top 5 accounts. It wasn't just business, it was validation. Every contract I closed felt like reclaiming a piece of myself they'd dismissed. Not out of vengeance, but justice. The following Monday, as I reviewed the new projections, Vanessa walked in with a smile that could light up the floor. "You ready for good news?" "Always. The board just approved your promotion. Vice President, Business Development. Congratulations." I froze. 3 weeks ago, I'd been packing my desk into a cardboard box. Now I was being handed the title I'd been denied for 4 years. "You earned it," she said. "And the timing's perfect. Dryfield's losing direction. We're going to absorb their market share." I nodded, quietly overwhelmed. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing approval. I was living proof that integrity and patience can outlast politics. It was late, the kind of quiet hour where even the city seems to take a breath. My office lights were dim, the hum of the AC steady in the background. That's when the call came. "Jared Davis?" "Speaking. This is Megan from Valence Executive Search. We're recruiting on behalf of Dryfield Robotics." I almost laughed. "You're joking." "Not at all. They're looking for a new vice president of sales." I leaned back in my chair, letting the irony sink in. The same company that had fired me for not being committed to the team now wanted to hire me to lead it. "Would you be open to a conversation?" she asked. I smiled. "Tell them I'm flattered. But I'm right where I belong." When the call ended, I looked out the window, The same skyline I'd stared at on the day I was fired. But everything was different now. This wasn't revenge. It was renewal. A circle complete. People often ask me if I ever regretted leaving Dryfield. But here's the truth. I didn't leave. They forced me out, and in doing so they set me free. If they hadn't underestimated me, I might have stayed another 4 years, waiting for validation that was never coming. Sometimes the greatest favor someone can do for you is to let you go. Because when you lose everything that isn't built on respect, you finally have space to build something that is. And that's how a firing became a foundation. How humiliation became hope. And how one man's dismissal became another man's destiny. If this story hit home for you, if you've ever been undervalued, overlooked, or told you weren't enough, remember this. You don't need their approval to prove your worth. Just keep building. Quietly. Relentlessly. And when you rise, let your success be the story they'll never forget. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and smash the notification bell so you never miss the next one. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated only to come back stronger? I read every single one.